Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Jensen from Dean's Chat. If you're on the fence as to whether you want to join the American Podiatric Medical Association, jump on in. It's a new APMA. Whether it's advocacy concerns, scope of practice, billing and coding, consider membership at the APMA as your professional insurance. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. Once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Jensen and Richey. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Jeff. How are you surviving we finally hit the triple digits? We had a nice June and it is officially starting.
You know, I usually wear sport coats and things, but I'm just going with the shirt today. It's just hot everywhere, right? So it's all good though. Hey, you know, it's a phenomenal week to have our friends from the University of Michigan joining us.
Yes.
I'd like to introduce to Dean's Chat, Dr. Brian Schmidt and Dr. Christopher Girgis. Welcome to Dean's Chat.
Thank you so much for having us.
Glad to be here this evening.
Oh, it's great to have you. Just for our audience, just to get a little background, we were all at the Symposium on Advanced Wound Care back in May, and both of you received awards. Dr. Schmidt, you received an award from the Wound Healing Society, and Dr. Girgis, you received the Difference Makers Award from the APMA. And if I remember correctly, it was a Sunday morning. It was the last day of the conference. There weren't a ton of people there, but I found myself just enthralled listening to your research and very excited about the future of our profession. And I was very grateful afterwards when I asked you if you'd be willing to come on Dean's Chat that you were willing to. So thank you and welcome.
Of course, absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming up and talking to us. And yeah, big fan, really like what you're doing and we're really happy to be here.
Yeah, I'll say, yeah, this is exciting. I mean, I don't get to talk too much about things that I present after the podium. So that's fun. And of course, presenting on Sunday mornings are always so much joy because you have such big crowds, but here we are. So this is a great follow-up to that. So
this is like the party after the party. You know, we'll go with it. Yeah. All right. Well, let me give you a little more formal introduction. Dr. Brian Schmidt, I'll go first with you. You are a clinical associate professor in internal medicine in the Division of Metabolism, Endocrinology, and Diabetes Division at the University of Michigan Medical School. You received your bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan in cell and molecular biology. You went to the Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine and followed that up with 3 years at Yale New Haven Hospital for residency. You've got a couple of NIH grants going, and we'll talk about that. I also wanted to mention your 2 certificates, one in quality improvement as a faculty facilitator, which is kind of like, that's our job here, Joe. We're kind of facilitators. We'll learn a little something here today. And then the second one is in clinical trials in academics. So we'll learn more about that also. So that's your background. Christopher, let's go back over to you. You are a clinical assistant professor. You're in the Department of Internal Medicine. Everything's the same, right? It's metabolism, endocrinology, and diabetes division. University of Michigan Medical School. Christopher, you did your residency program at Loyola. You followed that up with a fellowship at UT Southwestern, specializing in wound care. And now you're both in academic medicine. We're going to get a perspective of the University of Michigan. Welcome again. And I don't mind kicking it off. Let's talk about the Symposium on Advanced Wound Care. It's one thing to put your research together and submit it, but it's another to be acknowledged by leaders in the profession, not only APMA, but the Wound Healing Society. Do you mind commenting on each of those presentations and some of the research you did to get you there? And we'll get into your background and how you get into podiatry a little bit later. But Brian, you want to go first?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think part of my work in the Wound Healing Society coincides with a lot of the work I do at the National Institutes of Health for the grant work we're working on. And one of the major grants we're working on is called the Diabetic Foot Consortium. And it's this, I'll just briefly touch on it if you have questions, of course, but, it's this multi-site clinical trial network where we are looking for biomarkers in diabetic foot ulcers to tell us what's going to happen to patients eventually, whether they go on to heal, whether they go on to have an amputation. and even if they develop an infection. So we're looking for those things. And the Wound Healing Society has several members in the consortium. And, we partner closely with them. I work with them not only at scientific meetings, but also on committees. So we regularly interact with each other. And I think they see just all the things that go into taking care of people with diabetes and taking care of their feet. So they know I'm passionate about it. And I think they were pleased to nominate me to do that. And I was happy to give a talk about things that I'm doing in the consortium, but also, as a representative of podiatry as well.
Thank you. I wanted to mention your NIH grants. You've got two of them currently. One is worth 1.16 million and one is 1.2 million. You're doing some of them collaboratively, but gosh, congratulations. NIH work is truly validation of your expertise and the team you've put together and the mission you're on.
Yeah, it's I love to say, certainly maybe one of the first podiatrists to do these things. I don't want to be the last. And it's possible. And you know what? It does take a village. It really, I've had so many great mentors in my life, and hopefully I get to share some of those stories tonight. Yeah.
For sure. Well, we will share those for sure. Christopher, do you mind commenting on the Symposium on Advanced Wound Care and your presentation and the award you won sponsored by APMA as a difference maker?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was an acknowledgement of research that I submitted actually for the SAWC fall. And basically what we looked at, it was a retrospective study that looked at two different cohorts with diabetic foot ulcers. One cohort just had diabetic foot ulcers and the other had diabetic foot ulcers with cognitive impairment. And we tracked outcomes. And we found that the cohort with cognitive impairment did significantly worse on healing, admissions, and an infection. And so, that was kind of the research that it won a couple awards in the fall. And then for the spring, SAWC, I was awarded the Difference Maker Award, which is great. And so it's definitely kind of the first, first body of work that will I will pursue more prospective work down the road for. But I definitely appreciated the SAWC Difference Maker Scholarship, and it was great to be a part of that great conference.
Well, it's an honor and a privilege to be a difference maker. I mean, way to go.
Thanks.
Joel, your comments.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have both of you on. Looking through both of your CVs, I mean, you want to talk about an amazing amount of accomplishment that both of you have put forward in this space of diabetic limb salvage, wound care. And I'd really love to touch a little bit on what you said, Brian, about, kind of being a trailblazer in a sense in this world of NIH. There are certainly a couple other people we've interviewed that have had the opportunity to work on NIH grants, but it is few and far between. And so I'd love to and Brian, I also know you have a lot of mentorship on your CV too, which I'd love to touch on in this space of kind of new ventures for podiatry as a profession anyway, and talk about how did you get involved? We'll start with Brian. How did you get involved with NIH? And then what does it look like to you in terms of mentorship? And then we'll switch to you, Chris.
Yeah, so it's a big question. I think the other thing I'm fond of saying is I'm a product of good mentorship. I've had people that have put energy into my life, right? And so when I had a chance, I came to University of Michigan. At Yale, I did some research, some writing, and writing is one of my passions. And there was a few docs at the University of Michigan that grabbed me and took me to the side and said, you're a great doctor, but you're a better researcher and you are going to do this. And they said, we're going to help you. And they kind of grabbed my hand and said, here's what you need to do to explore that aspect of your mind that they kind of saw that potential in me. And so that led me to applying for grants, having my first strategic failures with grants, of course, because that's a part of it, but them also helping me and persevering through to actually obtain the K award that I received just for myself. So that's, it really is people saying, you can do this. I see the talent. I see your mind. Let's go get it. And just having those, surround yourself with good people. That's what it's really all about at the end of the day. Yeah.
That's kind of you're kind of humble though. I was going to say that's very humble of Brian.
It is.
So Brian, can I jump in just a sec, Joe?
Sure.
So Brian, like when it came to ideas and it came to writing and it came to doing a gap analysis to find out where there's an area where you could get research to fill a gap in research, how did that process work? Was it a team effort amongst you and others, or did you come up with the idea, or how'd that work?
I mean, like the way that my mind works is that I see a problem and I don't ask like, how can I make it better? I ask, why do I do that? Right. And that's where I start with. So I say, well, why do I do that? And then when I come to find out that I do that just because I was told to do that, that's not satisfying to me. So I try to then make it better. And of course, that reveals all kinds of gaps that exist. And then you want to fill and plug and chug all those gaps that you can find. And you design ideas and science around filling those gaps and answering those questions as you see as a part of everyday practice, really. Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't mean to jump in.
I love that.
Joe.
No,
I do. I thought it was great.
It reminds me, we had just come off of the Western conference, and there was something that someone said about like, what is a piece of advice that you would give, something like that. And mine was absolutely insatiable curiosity. Like the more curious we are, the more problems we will solve for people, whether that's clinical for our patients, the more curious we are about why they have what they have and how we can use our expertise to help them. And the flip side is also true on research. And I love that you brought that up, Brian, because that just really resonated with me. And it's become my new catchphrase, insatiable curiosity. I got teased a little bit and it's totally fine. I'll own it. But Chris, what is your experience or your take on some of the NIH work that you've been doing?
Yeah, so I have not quite done NIH work yet. I'm definitely with the help of Brian and Crystal Holmes, definitely trying to pursue some work. But I think research as a whole, I am also a beneficiary of some great mentorship, both in podiatry school residency and then in fellowship. And then now, being at University of Michigan, I have been very supported and by not only the podiatry faculty, but also other faculty as well. And that's been extremely, extremely helpful. And and so I'm just grateful for the mentorship that I've had. And research has always been something that I've been interested in pursuing. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's fantastic. So when you were doing your fellowship, Chris, down in Texas, Southwestern, you had the opportunity, was Larry Lavery was there?
Yep.
George Liu. Was LaFontaine there when you were there?
No, he had just left. So he left the March before I was there, and Andrew Crisalgo took his spot afterwards, who ended up being an awesome mentor and still is, and so I think very fondly of that fellowship. I think one of the catalysts that drew me out there was kind of learning from like Larry Lavery and Andrew Crisalgo, Paul Kim as well, in their like research modalities. I think that was probably the most valuable piece of that fellowship for me, as well as the robust clinical training as well. But I really benefited from that fellowship.
That's fantastic. We've talked to so many people in practice, people in academic environments that have had a fellowship, and they comment on the confidence and kind of the overall patient experience from initial presentation to follow-up that you get in a fellowship that sometimes you don't get in residency. Was that your experience?
Yeah, I think that's probably true for a lot of fellowships. For the UT Southwestern fellowship, I think it was, so you spent a lot of time at their county hospital, and the patient volume was just incredible. On an average week, you'd have 50 to 60 patients on your inpatient list. And so I think like handling like a very high volume of patients and becoming efficient within that, while also finding time to do research, was, I think, a very valuable skill that I use to this day. Because unless you become like, Brian, and you would get NIH work funding that buys some of your clinic time, you're trying to balance both things, And so I think having that foundation at UT Southwestern, like seeing, Larry Lavery and Andrew Crisalgo have very busy clinic practices, but also were able to be extremely productive as far as research goes, was really inspiring. And I definitely took some of their habits and applied it to my life now.
Well, that makes sense.
Can I jump on that, Jeff, real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that's so much of what I think is both of you are kind of describing is goes into this idea of mentorship. When you see people emulating the kind of behaviors and habits that you want to seek out, it helps you see yourself in those roles. Brian, I know you've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of different residents and students and fellows across several disciplines from what it looked like in some of the people that you've mentored. I'm curious if you can comment a little bit, the facilitator course that also looked like coaching. What are your thoughts about coaching and mentoring, and how do they differ, and how are they really similar in a lot of ways?
I think the aspect of like teaching, at the University of Michigan, we have an open clinic, and I'll speak to Chris's point that, if you come to the University of Michigan and you check out the hallway between our offices, we're both there very early in the morning. We stay late. Our doors are always open so that if people want to come by and talk to us, they're always welcome, whether it's a research coordinator, whether it's a student, whether it is, an administrator, it doesn't matter. Like, we're always there and we're always willing to talk. So I think that is where it starts. And then in the clinic setting and at the hospital, we interact with so many different people, and just having a friendly face and saying, hey, you want to learn more about what I do? Please come spend your time with me. And just sharing that wealth of knowledge that you have as a podiatrist is important, because a lot of people still don't know exactly what we do or what we're capable of. And when you invite people, they come into your life, and then through those actions, you can just spread so much more. And that's how you start to make bigger and better connections along the way.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And, when you had the opportunity to take that facilitator's course, were there things about coaching that you found were useful and valuable as compared to mentoring or emulating behaviors or just being open to talk to people? Were there things that you found changed what you did or impacted you?
Yeah, I think it was more of a authoritative position, in that you can teach as well and be confident to say, like, no, I understand the process of what we're trying to do, and be confident that it takes not just good mentorship and personal skills, but also like you have to understand where you're going with that person and what you're going to do. And so the facilitating, the coaching really gives you the structure on which to build and take people along the journey where they want to go, especially like mine was particular to quality improvement and patient safety work. But it really complements research well. So it gave me more framework to build the problem solving identity really for everybody. And then gives me structure to teach that going forward. It gives me that confidence rather than just one-on-one. I can actually apply this theory to learners everywhere or whoever I'm working with. Yeah.
Fantastic. Can we roll the clock back a little bit? You're both products of the Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine. How did each of you get interested in podiatric medicine from the beginning? Chris.
So I grew up, my dad is a dentist, and so I was kind of surrounded by like healthcare growing up. And so I kind of knew that I wanted to pursue something in healthcare, but I didn't know what. And so I was shadowing a lot of different doctors, and nothing really felt right. And it was my little brother actually who was searching online about different job careers. And he's like, you should look into podiatry. So I shadowed one podiatrist. His name is Rodney Stuck, and he was actually at Loyola. And he and this was early in my undergrad, and I shadowed him, and he was doing like a very cool mix of diabetic footwork. Like, he was doing research, he was involved with education, and I thought that was a really cool skill set to have. And so what ended up happening was that, I decided on podiatry, and I ended up going to his residency and trained under him. So it's fun how kind of that worked out that way. But I saw podiatry, in college, and I wanted a skill set that I could use to serve other people. And as soon as I shadowed Dr. Stuck, I knew that was the field for me. So
that's fantastic. Brian, what's your story?
I think it really mirrors that in a lot of ways. Like I was, an undergrad kind of doing the heavier science program, and I had met several doctors. I was shadowing a pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon at the time, and that person was working 100 hours a week all the time, really dedicated their life to helping those young souls, and then I came across another podiatrist at the University of Michigan, Dr. Crystal Holmes, and I met her probably, I don't know, in 2006, I want to say, when she was just starting at the university. And I said, hey, can I come shadow you? And she said, yeah, write me an email. So I did. And she wrote me back and she said, here, meet me at this place at, I don't know, 7:00 in the morning and wear good shoes. And she really broadened my perspective on medicine. Like, she told me everything there was about podiatry, just the hours, what you could expect. And I think having that realistic perspective really grew my interest in the field. And from there I looked at Scholl, and that was kind of fitting for my research background, if you will, or, my research interest, because they had the DPM PhD program that I would consider later on and not do, but still, I went there and we stayed in touch all these years. And now I work for her now. So it's been a, full circle story with her, but just again, highlighting that mentorship, that open communication with people throughout the years even. Yeah.
Joe, isn't that just a common theme in all of our interviews? If you reach out and make an effort and you connect with somebody downstream, you don't know if it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, things come full circle. I just think it's fascinating. And I don't think it's just because we're a small profession. I think it's human nature, maybe.
Yeah. And, you had highlighted that article from Harvard Business Review talking about the importance of mentorship. And this wasn't even medical related. It was just business related, and how simple it actually is to reach out to someone. And yet so few of us actually do it. And how impactful those little interactions really can be on someone. And now, as you said, Brian, now you work with this person, and what an amazing experience to have it really come full circle that way. So,
yeah. I'll give you a little closer to home for me story. Is I came down and visited Dr. Page before the Arizona College even opened. They were going to bring in their first class, and I was down here, and he gave me a tour, and I would have never guessed that 10 years later I'd be the dean, right? I mean, it's just funny how those kind of things work. And I think there's a lot to be said. And Joanna and I always emphasize with the students to get out and meet people, go to ACTFast, reach out to the residency programs when they come to the college and present, because it's those interactions that'll, in a sea of similar students with similar grades, everything about them is similar. Having that interface or experience one-off is oftentimes the difference maker. And it sounds like both of you've had that, especially Dr. Stuck also, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, to give people.
Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'd love to transition a little bit if that's okay. But before that, let's maybe take a quick word to hear from our sponsors.
Did you know APMA provides help with public health initiatives such as fall prevention, opioid abuse prevention, and addressing health disparities?
Did you know the APMA provides over $400,000 in scholarships annually to students pursuing podiatric medicine, helping the next generation of foot and ankle specialists?
If you're serious about this profession, if you want to grow, to lead, to make a lasting impact, join APMA today.
I'm curious what you're the most excited about, the technologies or the things that are coming that you think are going to be game changers. Again, we're not going to hold you to any of this, but what are the pieces of either technology or science that right now, like, you just feel that spark? Chris, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the big one here is AI for me. I think developing like visual prediction models for foot ulcers could be a very neat thing. I don't know if anything's in the works yet, but I anticipate that probably will be something down the pipeline that could be really cool and improve patient outcomes, so I'm excited to see what might develop as far as that goes.
Absolutely. Brian.
And I think for me, it's kind of the point of care testing. There are a lot of different markers, whether it's blood or urine or whatever, what have you. You can do these things in your office almost simultaneously to your clinical visit. And I think there's such a push for it from like the federal government and industry that marriage is really going to help bring some of these ideas to life. And I think having those tools available to us are really going to inform how we think about the diseases that we're treating, but also give patients realistic perspective and expectations about what they can expect with their condition. Yeah. So I think that's cool. And I think we'll see some of these come to life in the next, few years.
Yeah. It's so interesting, like how much is out there for precision medicine. And, as things continue to evolve and they become more accessible and maybe less expensive or less technically demanding, you have to ask, like, why would you not use these things to help impact and influence patient care, to your point, directly there on the spot? And I think patients will start to really kind of expect that. And everything else that we have, everything we're doing is becoming so much more tailored to us, that also, Chris, to your point, leveraging technology like AI to help improve outcomes and give people in the palm of their hand, right, personalized information to help them take ownership of their care. I think that's going to transform things in a way that right now it's hard to, as a patient, to take all that ownership, even though maybe they quote unquote should, when they can't see it. They don't have the experience and expertise in the way that we do, or think of it in the ways that we do. But when they can see it in the palm of their hand, like what glucose monitoring has done for diabetic patients, when you can see these things in real time, you make different decisions, you do different things. And how that may then translate into outcomes, I think, is incredibly interesting and terribly exciting. So,
yeah.
I had a question, and I can't remember. Brian, did you get an undergrad in psych, or was it you, Chris, that had a psych combination?
I did.
Chris. So to me, that's like the perfect. You get psych and you get the sciences, and then you go be a doctor. Speaking of point of care, interfacing with patients, the psych degree, I think one of the biggest challenges with diabetic patients is adherence to your plan, right? And hearing you and carrying it out after they leave your office. I used to tell my patients, I can't move you into my house and watch you 24/7, right? So how has your psych degree helped you form your interaction with patients? Because it has to have an impact.
100%. I think not only does it impact my day-to-day care, but it also has impacted kind of what I'm interested as far as research goes too. And I think kind of merging those two worlds has been really fun, and definitely something I'm looking forward to continue to pursue. But I think there's especially nowadays, like there are so many good psychology, like books that describe, sustainable excellence, or like how to interact with, other people and things like that I find so interested in. I think having that, psychology undergrad kind of laid a good foundation. But it's definitely been something that I've benefited from, and definitely impacts not only my, clinical care, but also my research ideas as well.
That makes sense, because I was reading some articles about the prevalence of depression in patients with diabetic foot complications, and the anxiety that goes with the unknown, fear of losing a limb. And there's a lot going on, right? And so any tips for our listeners when you're dealing with patients, when there is potentially a depression component of connecting with them and helping them see a light at the end of the tunnel, that, there can be a good outcome here? Any tips from your background?
Yeah. So I think at the very least, like I would have a low threshold for getting other professionals involved. Just because I think it's very easy for us to kind of have our head in the sand and not really think about it. But I think, getting other healthcare professionals involved is really, really important. But I also think like providing perspective on things is also really helpful. So like, I think there's a lot of research to support that like chronic illness is, takes a really big toll on not only the patient, but the family. And so just providing some sort of perspective for like, this is why compliance is important so that we can heal and you can, be there for your family or, whatever it might be. But I think, looking at the person as a whole person, as opposed to just, what next product can we put on the wound or, trying to look at them as a whole person, I think is really, really important.
Well said. Brian, you want to add to that at all about interacting with patients and the challenges we have when patients don't have feeling in their feet, no pain, no problem kind of sometimes.
I think the thing Chris says is really you have to humanize the person that you're treating. You have to not only just treat the disease and go in there and diagnose and give up a treatment plan, but also remember they're a person too, and just slow down and show some empathy and, tell them that, hey, I've seen this many times before and this is what I would do, or break it down and say, hey, I'm going to take off my doctor hat and talk to you from Brian. I'm going to give you my perspective on it. And I think, just touching that human side of them will lead to better understanding, at least about what your concerns are, if not, improving their outcomes associated with what that concern is. Yeah.
Well, I like that. It kind of invokes that old saying about leadership. The role of a leader is to define reality and provide hope. And that's kind of where doctors are when we're dealing with patients with chronic illness. So I like what both of you said. It's really a change in perspective from health care providers. A lot of these issues coming to the forefront. So glad you guys are on top of that. Joe, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually what you just said, Jeff, that's a really beautiful quote. Because again, as we kind of think about AI and some of the things that right now AI is not very good at, and I would say has the potential maybe to be taught how to do these things because it's a little out of my area of expertise, but certainly that we know AI is actually pretty good at empathy. Demonstrated it's a little bit better than we are. But what it's not necessarily good at is framing reality with empathy and then adding that experience on there. And what does my experience tell me about Mrs. Jones with her current psychological state and these barriers that she has to being compliant? Because as Jason Hanf had talked about, patients will tell you the things that are hard in their life if you ask, but they're not necessarily going to volunteer some of this information because it does feel a little bit invasive to, oh, I see you've been walking all over your cast again, you should stop doing that. But we didn't ask necessarily, oh, well, you've got, a 2-story walk up just to get into your apartment or whatever the barrier might be. Right. But if you ask someone, what I've noticed the last couple times that we've met, we've had these discussions. It seems like you understand why we don't want you to put weight on your foot, but you keep coming in with this cast that's broken down. Can you help me understand what is happening in your life that maybe is making this hard for you to do so that maybe we can problem solve together how to create that solution? Because I think sometimes when patients feel like what the doctor is going to do is throw a bunch of shade at them and be like, oh, bad patient for not listening. They're just going through the motions of coming to the appointment. But if we can connect with them, and I think, Brian, you had said the human part of what we do, AI can't do that yet. And I don't know personally if they ever really will be able to. Again, it's out of my area of expertise. So what I think is valuable is how can we leverage some of these tools to help us be better humans? And as we saw with certainly the pandemic, the most important part of medicine is the human part of what we do. There's a lot of things technically that we can do, but the human part matters so much. So where I would love to take this is, and we'll start with you, Chris, and we'll go to Brian. As you've kind of gone through your own career, have there been moments of impactful human, it could be you and a mentor, you with a patient, but something that was really profound that has kind of impacted what you do on a regular basis or why you do something?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. I could think of, so many ways that I had like extremely good mentors. And the way that, I think the people that I have grown from the most have been the people who have like given me the most feedback. And although it may not have been what I wanted to hear at the time, like, it helped me grow so much. And I think, I think back to, my time in Dallas, that 1 year fellowship. It was like a really tough year, but I grew so much from it. And so I think like that experience has really provided like what I hope to deliver to my fellows or the people that train under me is just like, not just being like, you push them to be able to grow, because I think those are the people you benefit from the most long term. And so that's kind of from a professional perspective. From a clinical perspective, I remember when I was in residency and like I was talking about pursuing having a patient pursue a toe amputation, and like the patient cried. And like, and, during like undergrad during podiatry school. And then, up until that point of residency, like patients never did that, but then like, I remember like, how big of a deal that is, we think it's just like a toe. But then like for a patient, like that's a huge deal. So I think like, I'll always remember that. And I think, that has, pushed me to deliver the best possible care that I can every day, as well as kind of see how we can improve outcomes, because it is, it really impacts patients. So,
yeah, that you said a couple things that really resonated. We forget we do this every day, right? Like, and in our mind, like, well, a toe amputation to save your leg, that's a no-brainer. But for a patient, that's not at all how they are looking at this. That's not at all how they're framing it. They don't have that lived experience. They are coming with a completely different story. And one of you, forgive me, I don't remember who said it, but just having the opportunity to slow down for a second and remember what it's like on the other side of the chair to take in all of this information and make decisions. So I can appreciate that a lot. Brian, what are your thoughts?
My thought really is it's a nice segue from that. And really at work one day, I was frustrated about having to train. I had another learner and I just was having an off day. And I remember one of my colleagues called me out in our little pod in the room where we normally just sit and do our dictations and things like that. And, we kind of barked at each other for a minute, and their point was, you need to just slow down. Like, these people are here for you. Like, they're here because of you and they want to spend time with you. Like, have that perspective. And in that day, in that moment, I certainly couldn't. And after I had calmed down or whatever I was going through that day, like it gave me that perspective to say, hey, like, they want to be here with you. Take the time, just spend some time. And you know what? You'll get home at 5:30 instead of 5 o'clock that day. It's not the end of the world. And certainly that was, and I'm glad that person called me out, and I really appreciate that. And it makes for a deeper friendship and, closer bond as we continue to work with each other these days.
Yeah, I heard feedback in there, right? Feedback is the gift. And sometimes it's a gift you don't want, but it helps us continue to improve and take stock and recognize, slowing down. And there's a whole different podcast where we could talk about system constraints to that and why we don't always have the time and the means to do those things, but we will fix those life problems in another podcast. So, because I think we got to do some rapid fire, Jeff. What do you think?
We do. I was just thinking, Brian, your comment reminded me of whenever we do orientation with the students, we talk about stress and then naturally, if you're stressed to the max, you're a little shorter and a little snippier. Mm-hmm. And we always tell our students when you're ready to fire off that flaming email to one of your co-students or friends or professors, just put it away and then look at it in the morning and then delete it because, sometimes stress gets the best of us.
Yeah. But never write an email with the person in the subject or the addressee right away. Wait to send it to them.
Right. But sometimes it's healthy to put it on paper, get some perspective, and then delete it. It's all good. Joe, rapid fire is the best. You want to lead it off?
All right, let's do it. All right, Brian, we're going to start with you because I've had Chris is the first one in my screen, so I've had this bias. But Brian, we're going to start with what music do you play if you're getting ready to like really get the work done? What's your music of choice?
I mean, I do like 90s rock and roll.
All right. Which bands ish, if you were to make like a top 3?
Stone Temple Pilots.
Okay.
Yeah, Soundgarden, and probably, I don't know. Maybe even a little bit of Shinedown for the 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How about you, Chris?
Oof. Mumford & Sons, Coldplay, and then, random other type of songs, but those are my two people. I've listened to them so much that it's just great, like background music.
Yeah. All right.
Brian, it warmed my heart. Soundgarden, Chris Cornell's my favorite. I was listening to him this morning on the airplane. All right. So it's date night, and you're in Ann Arbor. Where are you going for dinner, or what kind of food?
So my wife and I like to go to the Earl in Ann Arbor. It's a very quintessential like steakhouse or Italian restaurant in Ann Arbor. And then afterwards, we'd probably go to like a little bookshop, just read a book, have some coffee, and just chat. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
Chris.
Yeah. So we live right outside of Ann Arbor in this small town called Dexter, and they have a river walk. And right on the river walk, there's a couple fun restaurants. And so there's this one place called Aubrey's, and it's kind of Italian, and there's good pizza. And so it's nice to go on the river walk and then eat some like pizza, afterwards. So
fantastic.
All right. So you'd mentioned books, Brian. So either just one influential book, or if it's too hard to pick just one, maybe like a top 2 or 3.
Oh, I think World War Z. Like, I think that's one of the best zombie books there is. It's fast paced and it's a joyful read, even if you don't like the horror genre.
Fantastic. How about you, Chris?
Yeah. So, big psychology fan, Atomic Habits by James Clear is one I've read recently. Big fan of that. But
he's got a great newsletter too. I love his 3-2-1. I don't know.
It's great. Yeah.
His little PS thing at the bottom is the best. Like,
big fan. Yeah.
It's fabulous. Vacation destination of choice. Chris.
Someplace warm, so, not super picky, but someplace warm.
Come to Phoenix.
Yeah. Haven't been there before.
It's too warm. It's too warm, if that's possible. Brian, your destination of choice for vacation.
Somewhere where there's a warm water beach. It doesn't really matter what, but for sure.
Love it. Your turn, Joe.
Are we going to keep going? Okay. I didn't know from a time perspective if we got one more in there.
Okay. I have one. You go and I'll go one more.
Okay. All right, Brian, if you could invite anyone to dinner from any time in history, personal, family, or not, who would you invite and why?
I would have to go with my maternal grandfather. I never got to meet him. And from all the research and everybody I've talked to in my family, he's the person that I probably resemble the most. So I'd like to meet him.
Oh, that's awesome. How about you, Chris?
Oh, that's such a nice one. I grew up a big Chicago Bears fan. Loved Walter Payton. Died way too early. But I think he just kind of epitomized someone who worked really, really hard and, was successful for a very long time. So I would say Walter Payton.
Fantastic.
Okay, I'm going to digress a little bit and talk about football. So if you're a Bears fan, who's your team, Brian?
Oh, Lions.
Oh, yeah, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So Joe's with Arizona and I'm from Wisconsin. I'm a Packer fan. So what's this upcoming season looking like for the national conference?
If it's anything like last season, the Bears won't be doing well, and I won't be happy. But Brian will be very happy, because the Lions did so good. So
the Lions are struggling though a little. They lost some coaches, and
they just got to stop getting injured too. Like that's how do you stop that?
Joe, I think the Packers are coming to Arizona this year.
Oh, are they? We should go. That would be fun.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
All right. Sounds good. Anyways, I'm a Packer fan. I always think the Packers are going to win. And then inevitably something happens, like the Lions come out of nowhere. I personally think the Bears may be the team this year. You never know. Minnesota is going to be good. It's going to be a fun season.
Yeah.
And I'm just a glutton for punishment. So we've had like 2 or 3 good years and like 15. So I'm just used to this side of the cheering squad. It works.
All right. Sounds good. Well,
it's all about the underdog.
There you go. There you go. Joe and I want to thank both of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to share about your career and your research. And I want to congratulate you again on the awards you got at the Symposium on Advanced Wound Care. And I look forward to collaborating in the future. You never know. Maybe like there's an NIH grant in the works.
Always welcome. Reach out anytime. Happy to chat. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Joe, any last words?
No, thank you both so much. It's so fun to get to meet so many incredible people, and both of you are just absolutely outstanding. I mean, the work, I know that the audience doesn't get to see your CVs the way that we do, but the amount of work in a relatively short, you're both still very young. It's absolutely remarkable. So just continue in that form of excellence. It's outstanding.
Absolutely. And we're going to send you each Dean's Chat cups. You know, you're going to need some energy to write those grants and, late nights and doing charts and all that. We get it. And then you can put your beverage of choice into the Dean's Chat cup. So to all of our listeners out there, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, please give us a 5-star rating, or better yet, leave a comment or two. And if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, become a subscriber. Joe and I will continue to bring leaders in our profession to you. And until next week, everybody, cheers.